Hari Om, Namaskar, Suswagatam, Pujya Swami Aparajitananda, our study group leader, Srimati Amini Krishnan, and my fellow seekers. At the outset, I request Srimati Meera to lead us all in the traditional invocation. All of you should chant along, but with your mics muted and cameras switched off. Please take a moment now to check that your mic is muted. Thank you. Srimati Meera, over to you.
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देवदेव हरि ओम.
Thank you, Meeraji. That was a fitting opening to the morning session. In today's world, most questions can be answered as soon as they arise because we all have Google or her less renowned sisters on the internet at our fingertips. There are, however, some questions that can only be answered through experience and realization. For this, we need to be guided by those who have that experience to put us on the right path. This is the reason we are gathered here today, to benefit from the wisdom of Pujya Swamiji, who will answer our questions today. Thank you. I now call upon Sri Gopalan Ramaya to say a few words of welcome on behalf of all of us. Mr. Gopalan.
Hari Om and Pranams. Our salutations of the lotus feet of Pujya Gurudev Chinmayananda Ji, Pujya Swami Tejomayananda Ji, Pujya Swami Swarupananda Ji, Pujya Swami Brahmananda Ji, and Pujya Swami Aparajithananda Ji, and all other Acharyas of Chinmaya Mission. Swami Aparajithananda Ji needs no formal introduction to Chinmaya Mission members. Nevertheless, I have been assigned with this task and permit me to perform this duty. In his Purvashram, he was an electronics and communication engineer and started his professional career as a lecturer for 5 years before his inner call to study the scriptures directed him to do an intense training for 2 years in Sandeepani Sadhanalaya in Mumbai. Following this, Swamiji joined Chinmaya Mission as a full-time Acharya. On the auspicious day of Mahashivratri in 2018, he was ordained for Sannyasa Diksha. Served in various mission centers of Karnataka in Bangalore, Mysore, Shivamogga, and is currently serving Mission Center in Mangalore. Swami Aparajithanandaji is very well known for rendering captivating divine invocational bhajans, a tradition followed in our mission. Endowed with great articulatory skills, he shares his in-depth knowledge with ease in calibrated steps suiting to our level and for overall enrichment of understanding of the scriptures. Spiritual seekers have always eagerly awaited Swamiji's programs like Gita Jnana Yajnas and on various texts like Atmabodha, Tattvabodha, Kenopanishad, and he has conducted various workshops in Deenabandhu Temple, Indiranagar. And we sadhakas have all gained immensely by attending the yajnas and workshops. Online sessions like Growing with Devotion, Asking Me Anything, conducted recently, is an eye-opener to many of us. A new dimension of various topics on YouTube, question-answer session, the spoken and unspoken doubts, which Swamiji is bound to give us, the sadhakas, with a lot of pointers and get further reinforcement in our spiritual journey. With these words, on behalf of Indiranagar Study Group, I welcome Swami Aparajithananda ji and we seek his blessings. Hari Om.
Thank you, Gopalanji. May I now call upon Swamiji to give us the privilege of his Ashirvachana. Over to you, Swamiji.
Hari Om. I'm indeed pleased that this study group has been going on for so many years, and I sincerely congratulate Ammini Amma for conducting these classes, Krishnanji also. So, indeed pleased that there are so many sincere seekers who are coming and attending these classes. I think you all have given me a question, a set of questions. So let us, without wasting time, directly enter into the question.
Thank you, Swamiji. We are all very happy to have received your good wishes. I will now hand over to Srimati Bhanumati, who will conduct the question and answer session with Swamiji. The way we will do is that when Bhanumati calls upon you to ask your question, please unmute your mic and switch on your video so that Swamiji can see you while you ask your question. Thereafter, please mute your mic and switch off your video so that we can hear Swamiji's answer. All other participants should continue to keep their mic and video off. Thank you. Over to you, Bhanu.
Hari Om Swamiji and Hari Om to all our study group members. Yeah, we directly start. I put my appreciation for the consolidation of questions. We start with spiritual practices based questions. The first question is from Mrs. Lakshmi of Wednesday group.
Pranam Swamiji, Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
My question is, what is the significance of chanting the 50th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in particular before a meal?
The 15th chapter is the shortest chapter in Bhagavad Gita, along with the 12th chapter. So maybe that is the reason, because we don't want to wait too much before the meal. Just in 5 minutes everything is over. But Amma, the real reason we may think about is, it is only in the 15th chapter Bhagavan says, the last verse, iti guhyatamam shastram. So the entire 15th chapter is called Shastra by Bhagavan. Now, Shastra means what? Shastra means scriptures. But if a text has to be called Shastra, it should answer the most important 6 questions. What are the 6 questions? What is Jiva? What is Jagat? What is Ishvara? What is Moksha? What is Bandhana? And what is the sadhana to attain Moksha? So these are the 6 important questions. So only when a scripture has answered these 6 questions, such a scripture is called Shastram. Now interestingly, in 15th chapter, you will find all these 6 questions are answered. So the shortest and a complete chapter, we can say it is a 15th chapter. So maybe that is the reason why we prefer to chant 15th chapter before the meal. Did I answer, Amma?
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yes.
Yeah, the next question is from me, Swamiji.
Ha.
Is reading particular scriptures helpful in easing the path of sadhana? And if so, which are they? The question sprouted because we have a 10 years of class attendance, but which scripture easily gives us the way to the sadhana?
Amma, the most important thing in sadhana is purification of mind, isn't it? Purification of mind will depend upon your faith, your devotion, your paying attention, your understanding. So rather than which scripture to chant, let us ask this question with what attitude to chant, because all scriptures are equally divine. All scriptures are equally auspicious and sacred. But very many times when we chant, the mind is wandering or we have no faith, etc., etc. So more important than which scripture to chant, the more important is with what attitude to chant. Any scripture is fine for that matter. Any scripture is fine.
Yeah, thank you. I think it answers. The next question is from Mrs. Meera, Sunday Evening Group.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om.
I practice chanting of Lalita Sahasranama, Vishnu Sahasranama regularly and as often as possible, even while cooking and all other activities. The texts have now become memorized, and sometimes I see that I chant fastly with lesser awareness now that they have become memorized than it was before I had memorized them. Is there any how to ensure focus and awareness after memorizing the texts as well? If you can give some guidance about that, it will be great. Thank you.
Yes. Many times what happens is, once a text is memorized, on one side we are chanting that particular text, on the other side the mind starts wandering. This happens when we have by-hearted a particular text like Vishnu Sahasranama, Lalita Sahasranama, etc. So on one side you are chanting, on the other side mind is busy planning something, worrying about something, etc. So therefore, how to bring the mind to the present? This is the question. The best way is chant one verse and wait for some time and ask yourself with this question whether the mind is here or not. For example, what is that first one? Vishwam Vishnur Vashattaro Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu. Wait. See whether your mind is here. If your mind is here, then chant the next one. Bhuta Krit Bhuta Bhritbhavo Bhutatma Bhuta Bhavanaha. Again wait. Normally what do? One after the other we keep on going. Don't do that. Amma, please switch on your radio. The person who asked the question. Amma, did I answer your question?
Yes, Swamiji.
So, every time you finish one verse, pause.
Okay.
See whether your mind is wandering or is it here in this moment.
Okay.
Is it aware? Is it listening? If it is listening, continue. If it is wandering, then repeat again whatever you have chanted just now.
Okay. Okay.
Without it being in the present, don't go forward.
Okay, Swamiji. Sure.
Then this problem can be avoided. Yes.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hari Om.
Right. Hari Om.
Thank you. The next question is from Mrs. Geeta Subramaniam, Thursday Group.
You are in mute, Amma. You are in mute.
He thought, yeah.
Yeah. Hariom Swamiji. So, the
Hariom.
same three questions which they have explained. And my question was, without knowing the meaning, what is the effect of the chanting? Which you have explained now. You have to have the meaning, you have to have the alertness, you have to have the concentration, then only the chanting will have an effect. By the way, but I want to hear from you how to concentrate on, as you said, you have to bring it back again and again when you are just slipping away. That means you have to concentrate only couple of minutes, or concentration level has to be developed slowly.
As you practice concentration, it will develop. It will develop. With more and more practice, everything can be developed. That's why Abhyasa is given so much of importance in the scriptures. Abhyasena vairagyena, Bhagavan says. So when there is Abhyasa, concentration slowly develops. So you are able to concentrate for a longer time, and you are able to concentrate deeper also. So intensity and duration, they grow with practice. Hariom.
Yeah. The next set of questions are the qualifications for a spiritual seeker. The first question is from Mrs. Jayashree.
Hariom Swamiji.
Ah.
Forgetting past actions of mine and others is very challenging. I still seem to have sadness about others' actions and guilt due to mine. How to be truly free from memories of past actions and move on without forgetting the lessons learned?
Amma, this is another question, no?
Yeah.
Some titiksha or something you are asking?
Okay, so that's my second question. I had thought that being silent in a good way is to practice titiksha, but it is also causing issues as opinions are being made, which is not true. I am doubting if silence is good or not. How to be joyful with everyone, and please guide me as my meditation is also suffering.
Amma, first of all, we have to understand choiceful situation and choiceless situation. In a choiceless situation, you have nothing to do because you cannot do anything. It's a choiceless situation. So what should be our attitude when there is a choiceless situation? We have to just accept it as prasad from the Lord. Cheerful acceptance is the solution for choiceless situation. You can't do anything. There has to be cheerful acceptance. Right? So this is with regard to choiceless situation. What about choiceful situation? In choiceful situation, you must exercise your choice. You can do something, there is some problem, there is a solution which you know, and the Lord has given you the means to solve that problem. You are in such a position, you have a particular power, you have that talent, you have that ability, you have that knowledge, and you are in that particular position. So then what you have to do? You will have to exercise that choice. Now, your job is only one: perform your responsibilities, your duties in such a way that Lord is pleased with you. Not whether people are pleased with you. No. Your only one question you have to ask is, if I do this, will my Lord be pleased with me? Will He be happy with this particular action of mine? This is the only question you need to ask. Now tell me, what are the ways in which Bhagavan will be pleased with you? When you are following the righteous path, Bhagavan will be pleased. And when you are performing actions saying that Bhagavan, all my talents and abilities, it belongs to you. I am only an instrument. You are the one who is doing through me. So with this egoless attitude when you do, Bhagavan will be pleased with you. So Bhagavan expects from you absence of ego. Bhagavan expects from you righteousness, morality, straightforwardness, honesty. So all the virtues of life, Bhagavan expects from you. He doesn't want you to compromise with the higher values of life. So therefore, when you are doing in this way, Bhagavan will be pleased with you. And how will you know whether Bhagavan is pleased with you or not? You will find that there is no guilt feeling. This is the proof. Look within. If the mind is peaceful after performing an action, understand the Lord is pleased with you. So this is how Bhagavan connects to us. This is how Bhagavan communicates to us. If he is happy, your mind is peaceful. If he is unhappy, you will have guilt feeling, your mind will be disturbed. Right? Now, this is the way you have to handle choiceful situations. Now, in the process, you will definitely find that a group of people will like you because you did something in favor of them. And another group of people will not like you because you did something against them. You will always find that these two groups will be there. You cannot please 100% everybody, not possible. So therefore, the only thing you need to do is Bhagavan pleased with me? This is the only question you need to ask. Now what will happen to these people who are not pleased with you? They will insult you, they will abuse you, they will, hate you. All these things will happen. Now another major responsibility which we have is never to hate them, never to have ill will against them who hate you. Because if you have negative feelings, then these negative feelings will disturb you at the seat of meditation. So therefore, what is our responsibility? Love them, forgive them, be compassionate towards them. So if this is your attitude, means even when they are hating you, you keep on forgiving them, loving them. If this way you can do, you will find that your meditation also will be perfectly smooth. And even when you are silent, very many times you can't explain to them because they will not understand. Even when you are practicing silence, let it be cheerful silence. Because silence also has got so many moods. You can be angry and therefore you can be silent. You hate somebody, therefore you are silent. You don't like somebody, therefore you are silent. You are very pessimistic, therefore you are silent. It's a hopeless condition, therefore you are. So silence also has so many moods. So may you practice cheerful silence. You are silent because you don't have any doubts. You are silent because everything is fine. You are silent because you are fulfilled. So let this fulfillness appear as cheerfulness and then practice silence. Then you will find that the others also will understand your silence. If you are very angry and silent, then others will misunderstand your silence. So your body language should be such that you are cheerful and silent. Then there won't be any problem. Did I answer, Amma?
Very much, Swamiji. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. It was really a nice answer there where we all also relate to the question and the answer. Yeah, the next question is from Mrs. Aruna, Sunday Evening Group. Guna and Dosha.
Hari Om Swamiji pranams. What is guna and what is dosha? How to differentiate in the two? How to develop the ability to not see dosha in others or that others, which comes so naturally to us.
What is guna and dosha? Anything which disturbs your mind is dosha. Anything which takes away the peace of your mind is dosha, and anything which quietens the mind is guna only. Something good. So you will find that when you entertain good thoughts, your mind is cheerful, peaceful, quiet. When you entertain bad thoughts, your mind is disturbed. Right? So this is a simple definition of guna and dosha. Now the question is, I hope I have answered this, Amma. Yes. You please keep the speaker on. The mic on.
Yes, Swamiji.
In case there is any doubt, you can immediately ask.
Yes, this is clear.
And now the question is how to develop the ability not to see the dosha in others. See, Amma, so we are all sadhakas. We all have studied scriptures. And what does the scripture say? Everybody is inherently divine, isn't it? Because the Lord is existing in the hearts of all. We are all Satchidananda Swarupa. We are all Atma Swarupa. So basically, in essence, we are all divine. Right? But very many times what happens? People are ignorant about their own self. So therefore, because they are ignorant about self, they are more egoistic and selfish and crooked and wicked, etc. So then what is the mistake we do? instead of giving more attention to their divine nature, we start giving more attention to their devilish nature. This is our mistake. Where should the attention be? Upon the divinity of the person, because the divinity is the real thing. That negativity in them is only a temporary thing because of their ignorance. It is something like this. Suppose you are given gold covered with mud. Will you value it or not? Gold covered with mud. You know that there is gold in this.
Then
But
yes,
externally you are seeing only mud. Will you value it or not?
definitely yes, it's got value.
You will value it because you are not seeing the mud. You know that this mud will go. The real thing is inside, isn't it? You will value it.
Correct.
In the same way, people, because of their ignorance of the self, they are behaving in a particular negative way. But if you are really a spiritual seeker, you don't give too much of importance to that negativity. Your attention is the gold within. What is that? The Supreme Lord is residing in the heart. Right? So, how to develop the ability not to see the dosha? There is only one way. Know first of all that you are divine. You are not the body. You are not the body, mind or intellect. You are the Supreme Self. When you know the reality about yourself, when you know that you are that Supreme Consciousness, so naturally what you will see in others?
Same thing.
Consciousness. If you see yourself as a body, you will see others also as a body. But if you see yourself as consciousness, you will see the same consciousness in others. So helplessly, choicelessly, effortlessly, spontaneously, you start loving others in spite of their wickedness and crookedness. There is no other way. Because you are seeing consciousness there, which is the real thing. Did I answer, Amma?
Oh, this was really eye-opener. Hariom.
Yeah. The next question is from Mrs. Geeta Subramaniam.
This is about Stoicism and equanimity. See, when we are reading about the scriptures, Stoicism is just to be calm and quiet, or equanimity. What is the difference between these two?
Amma, first of all, you will have to define what is Stoicism according to your understanding. What is this Stoicism? You must, because...
You just accept or quieten yourself, and you don't react. That is that's what I felt. On certain occasions, you don't react to that because you say, okay, this is the way it is like. You take it as it is. So that I felt that is Stoicism. And equanimity, which we see in our Bhagavad Gita chapter, they say, Bhagavan keeps saying, you have to take dukkham, sukham equally. So the difference, how to practice it in our day-to-day life.
Okay. So, if I have understood you rightly, according to you, Stoicism means people, what to do. Since we can't do anything, let us accept. This is the attitude. Because it's destined or whatever.
To certain extent, maybe, but not always. You know very well that is not the correct way, but there's no other alternative, or there's no method. You know how to deal with it. So, okay, let me be quiet, let me be calm and
Acceptance.
acceptance at that moment.
Now the most important question is, acceptance can be a pessimistic acceptance also. What to do?
No.
Since I can't do anything, let me accept.
No, not
Is
like
it
that. Right, it's not like that.
See, always your acceptance, your silence, etc. should be a cheerful one.
Yeah.
And when does that cheerfulness come? When you come to know that whatever God is doing, He is doing the right thing, He is doing the just thing. Because we are Alpatnyas, we don't have much knowledge. Whereas Bhagavan is Sarvatnya, He knows everything. So it is impossible that He can do something wrong. It is impossible. Because God cannot do anything wrong, So therefore, whatever he does, and we all know that even a blade of grass cannot move without his command. Right? So when you have this knowledge that I am a limited being with limited knowledge, limited ability, etc., but there is a supreme being who is Sarvajna, Sarvashaktiman, Sarvavyapi, such a Bhagavan is handling this world, running this world. So now you can accept everything cheerfully because there is somebody there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this leads to equanimity of mind, which is Samatvam Yoga Uchyate, which Bhagavan says.
Yeah. So again, when the previous question, when we said there is Atma, there is Bhagavan inside us. So that's what we see in everywhere, and we have to develop. I have the ability, Bhagavan gives me the energy, strength, and everything. So that responsibility which I am going to accept, or when I'm doing some work, that means then I have to accept this and also accept that the supreme power is there, which is guiding me. So
Yes.
there is a slight difference. How do you mentally prepare yourself for that?
Whatever responsibilities are there, it is the Lord who has given you the ability to fulfill the responsibilities. It is not my ability. This ability is a borrowed ability. So there are certain abilities, and the Lord has given me that ability to fulfill those responsibilities. Lord has given those abilities, so that also belongs to Him. So my job is only one: do as best as I can and remain cheerful all the time. As I told you, choiceless situation, you don't have to do anything, be cheerful. Choiceful situation, exercise your choice by using the God-given abilities. In both the cases, remain cheerful. That is your highest responsibility.
Either way, we have to accept as it is and act as cheerfully as possible. And then say it's God's will, God's work, I have to do this.
Yes.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari.
The next set of questions addresses the creator and creation. The first question is from me. Can you elaborate on the relation between Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara, and Brahman?
Yes.
It is a list of so many names by which we call ourselves, and Supreme, Truth, Atma. So I thought these four at least we can address.
Yes. Amma, the ultimate reality is Satchidananda Atma, which we call it Brahman or Atma or whatever, Paramatma, etc. Now, Jiva, the individual, he doesn't know this truth, that he is none other than Satchidananda Atma. So therefore, the whole Jagat is created, the world is created, in order to take the Jiva to his own true nature, which is Brahman. So the game is played. So Brahman takes the role of Ishvara. Brahman, with the help of Maya, becomes Ishvara, creates Jagat in order to take the Jiva to Brahman. You understood?
Yeah, got it. Bhagavan, with the help of Maya, becomes Ishvara, create the Jagat so that the Jiva can find the connection to the Supreme Lord.
That's all.
So nice. Thank you, Swamiji. Too many words, but yeah, it's a simple explanation which I think will sit. Yeah, the next is also from Mrs. Geeta Subramaniam.
Manu, can you...
While visiting a Vishnu temple, one is able to clearly identify the idol. Can I read the full question?
Yeah, please.
While visiting a Vishnu temple, one is able to clearly identify the idol and the avatar form, Parthasarathi, Venkateshwara, Anantashayana, etc. Whereas Shiva is represented in Linga form, and these are given variety of names. To a common person, it seems to be a row of similar lingas with different names, and it would not matter if the names are interchanged. How are lingas within the Shiva temple identified and differentiated?
So Amma's question is, all the lingas appear same only. There is no difference at all. Why so? Dwadasha lingas are there. Everything is similar. Whereas Krishna, Vishnu, etc., everything is different. Amma, that is a question, isn't it?
That's right. That's my daughter's question, because every temple we go, all avatars we are able to identify every deity. Whereas Linga Swarupam is supposed to be a common one where you can identify yourself as a lingam, and then
Yes.
you pray. And then why they give so many different names for that Linga Swarupam and then identify it. In the same Shiva temple, there are so many Shivalingas around in the Prakaram also. So why that's multiplicity?
Now, Amma, linga means what? What is the meaning of linga? Linga means an indicator. Linga means that which indicates, right? Now tell me, what is more important, the indicated or indicator?
Indicated is important.
Indicated is important. For example,
Important.
you are sitting there in the night and there's a beautiful moon there. So I say, Amma, look at that moon, so beautiful. So with my finger, I show you. But suppose there is a stick in my hand, then with the stick, I show you. Or suppose I am drinking coffee, then with the coffee hand, I show you. Look at the moon. So the indicator is not important. The indicated, the moon is important, isn't it?
Yes.
What is important is not the stick or the coffee cup or anything. What is important is the indicated moon.
Yeah.
In the same way, linga is the indicator.
Okay.
What is indicated? Indicated is self, the supreme self. Now the indicated is the same. So therefore, by making all the indicators same, the indication is the indicated is same. You understood?
Yeah.
There's only one Bhagavan. So therefore, you will find that I think in Jain Sampradaya also they have the Tirthankaras. All of them are similar. This is only to point out, don't give too much of attention to the external names and forms. Give attention to the essence, which is the same.
So that is the answer. That's what it used to bother us. So why this is, what is that I am missing to see? So now we are only thinking, whatever be the Rupam, I have to only concentrate on the supreme consciousness.
Yes.
Whichever form I am seeing, it is only so name and forms are not important. The consciousness is important one.
Yes.
Swamiji, isn't that true for Vishnu also?
It is true everywhere.
Right?
Is true.
It doesn't matter whether it is Anantamanabha or
No.
Krishna or right?
Doesn't matter. There is only one God.
Correct. So whether it is a linga which we really can't relate to with a name, but these forms, that beautiful forms of Vishnu that we get so mesmerized with.
Yes.
What?
That is why, that is why in Ganesha Chaturthi, what is the final thing you do? Immerse the form and go to formless. In Devi worship also, Navaratri, what is the last thing you do? Immerse the form. That beautiful form which you have been worshipping, the last thing you do is immersion. Because from form, you have to go to the formless.
Yeah. So the next set of questions are dealing with karma, involvement and entanglement. Mr. Ramaya Gopalan, can you please pose your question?
Hari Om.
Ha.
I'm seeking a clarity whether my understanding is correct. This is regarding the difference between involvement and getting entanglement.
Ha.
The situation is, I have been asked by some family members to sort out a very sensitive family matter. My understanding is performing a role to the best of one's ability without taking any credit for the results and leaving the outcome to Narayana could be termed as involvement for the sake of others, an act of selflessness. But if I add any expectation or outcome for my efforts, then it becomes an act of selfishness, which is entanglement and bondage. Is my understanding correct, Swamiji? Can you throw some light on that?
Perfect, perfect, perfect. There is nothing to add. You have to involve, but don't get entangled. This is a perfect explanation.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
The next question is from Krishna Lokesh, Sunday Evening Group. Krishna Lok Singh. Yeah.
Hari
Please
Om.
please
Hari
put
Om,
on.
Hari
Yeah.
Can you read out the question for me?
Yes. When we take a decision, it favors some and not in favor of some people. Even when you took sannyas, we hope your family members might be against it. We are getting benefited, including Chinmaya Mission people. Is it possible to take decision that is good for all? You may please elaborate and suggest if I am right.
Yes. See, you can take a decision what is good for all, but you cannot take a decision which pleases all. Got it? You
Yeah,
can
got it.
take a decision which is good for all, and that is what you have to do also. What is good for the samashti, you have to do, not what is good for the vyashti, the individual. No. And everyone will have this conflict, role conflicts. For example, suppose there is an army man. He is the only son of his parents. And now war breaks out. So now as an army man, should he stay back saying that no, I have to take care of my father and mother. I should not go for war because if I die, then who will take care of my father and mother? Matra devo bhava, pitra devo bhava. Now should he behave as a family man or should he behave as an army man? Army man means taking the bigger responsibility of fighting the war and protecting the nation. So now which role he has to take? No, these two roles are conflicting because if he goes to war, then he will not be able to protect the family. If he remains with the family, then he cannot go for the war. Now which role will he should take? Always he should take the role which is bigger, which affects the majority of the cross section of the society. So this is how dharma. Now for example, Arjuna's case is that as a family man, he is supposed to worship Drona and Bhishma. But as an army man, he is supposed to kill Drona and Bhishma. What did Krishna say? Your role as an army man is bigger than your role as a family man. So always this is the way we have to think. Let us not try to please everyone. Let us try to do what is good for everyone. Did I answer Krishna ji?
Yes, yes, Swamiji. Yes,
Yes.
Thank you.
The next question is from Mrs. Aruna, Sunday Evening Group.
Ha.
As we progress through.
As we progress through the spiritual journey, is it better to give up? Job here is mostly worldly things, right, that we do for a daily living. How do we manage competition or lack of it in our part to that affect in office? We know that some of the politics in office is not what we want to be part of, but staying away puts us in a spot and we are seen as non-performing or not really being aggressive. Please clarify how to handle this situation. This is a constant conflict I live in, Swamiji, because in office it's always prone to a lot of cross section of attitudes and values. And so a lot of conflicting things happen, and then I'm struggling to stay on top of it because at this point in time I know that this is important and I need to continue this for some more time at least. Right. So how do I make sure that my mind is not affected by this, and how do I know what is the right thing to do? Because of so much of conflicts, I sometimes don't know whether I'm doing the right thing. So how do I, avoid this office conflicts?
Amma, first of all, understand that you are not competing with anyone. This very concept of competition is a foolish concept because the talents and abilities which you have, all that belongs to God, and the talents and abilities of your opponent is also belonging to God. We are nobodies in the world, isn't it?
Sure.
We are all nobodies. Then who is competing with whom? We are all here to perform our duties as a worship of the Lord, to please the Lord, to purify the mind so that we can evolve spiritually. This understanding should be very, very, very clear in all of us. Here we are not working for earning a living. That may be a superficial explanation. Here we are performing our duties to spiritually evolve and finally realize ourselves. This clarity has to be there. This is the lifetime goal, right? So now, when you start performing your action keeping this goal in mind, you will find that you have no time for this politics or backbiting or gossip or anything. You are performing your duty. That duty is being performed as a worship of the Lord. So then what will happen when you start performing your action like this, slowly, you naturally, people are watching you. You are more efficient. What you call unwanted words don't escape your mouth. Whatever you speak to the point. You speak what is beneficial for all. You speak for the welfare of all, right? So naturally what happens, your personality stands out from the crowd. So a time comes when your colleague starts respecting you. Your boss also starts respecting you. And you are an embodiment of peace because you are connected to God. You are embodiment of peace, you are embodiment of enthusiasm, strength, etc. So naturally you become a role model for many of the people who are watching you, who are with you. So a time will come whenever they have some problem, maybe financial problem, family problem, whatever problem, psychological problem, they will come to you because they see strength in you. Any peaceful person is the strongest person.
Correct.
Peace and strength go together. So here is a person who is living his life without any kind of complaining or grumbling, very peaceful, very joyful, loving everybody, respecting everybody. So naturally you become a role model. So even your boss may come to you to get some guidance, to get peace of mind. This is the way to live. Let others people do backbiting or whatever, let them do it. You don't involve. And remember always, this world is run by the Lord. Your company or organization also is run by the Lord. So your responsibility is only towards God and with nobody else. Once you are in tune with Him, you will find that automatically you are in tune with everyone. Did I answer your question, Amma?
Yes. I seem to understand where probably I'm not doing the right thing.
Swamiji, you said that you have to, this is God's work, that's how we get, but day-to-day things when you you are slipping away from that expectation or anything. As you said, we can ignore all the backbiting, no gossiping, because you are not part of it. But still, as you mentioned, that the strength, you are peaceful, you are at the thing, you know what you are doing is correct, but that's sometime you feel there is a weakness or you feel that strength is not there. How to develop at that moment?
Amma, whenever you forget God, you become weak. Understand this. The moment you forget God, you are a nobody. So all the strength has to come from God alone. It is impossible that you are connected to God and still you are weak. It is impossible. So whenever you find that you are, there is a strain and you are struggling, you will find that you have left God. Immediately charge, like the mobile, when the charge is down, what is the first thing you do? You charge the mobile. In the same way, connect to God, strengthen, and again face the battle of life. Right.
Yeah. So our next question is from Mrs. Chitra, Sunday Evening Group.
Yes.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om.
My question is, we are reading and learning so much from the Gita, from all our Upanishads, everything. I come across this verse, Sanchita, Prarabdha, and Agami so often. And to a certain extent, I've started feeling that, okay, when something goes wrong in my life, it's my Prarabdha, something I have done. And like Gita ji was saying, you sort of start saying that, should I accept it and just stoically keep quiet about it, move about? So I want to know, what exactly is it? Is there a way to balance it, or do we erase it? What exactly are we supposed to do? I'd like to know a little more about what is Sanchita, what is Prarabdha, what is Agami, and what are their influences and what we need to do.
Amma, this topic comes in Tattvabodha. These terms are introduced in Tattvabodha. So please listen to that. But anyway, I will just mention what it is. Whenever you perform an action, that action comes back to you as results, as karma phala. So whenever you do a karma, that karma comes back to you as karma phala. This is the law. Right? So all the actions which you have performed, which has not yet come back to you as karma phala, which is just stored somewhere, that is called as sanchita karma. Sanchita means well accumulated. Well accumulated. So this well accumulated karma is from many, many births. It is there, stored. It is just waiting to fructify and become the results of those actions. So all those actions which have not yet become karma phalas, but which is waiting, then that is called as sanchita. Now out of sanchita, one part fructifies and they are ready to give results. So that is called as prarabdha. So whatever body we have taken, it is because of the prarabdha karma, which was a part of sanchita karma, which has become prarabdha karma because the time has come, the maturity period has come. Now that karma has fructified and now it has started giving results. Now in order to go through the result, we have taken up this body. This is called as prarabdha. You have to just go through, there is no other way. Then there is the third one called agami. Agami means in the present the actions which you are doing, which will in the future bring in results. Agami means future. So actions done in the present, which in the future will bring new results, they are called as agami karma. Right? Now let me give an example. So suppose in Sanchita there are 1,000 karmas. Out of that, let us say 100 karmas have reached its time of fructification. So that 100 comes and becomes prarabdha. So how much is left there? 900. Sanchita 900. That 100 has come. Now it has become your prarabdha. Now you are given a life. You are given a body, human body, animal body, whatever body. So that 100, now you have to go through it. This is called as life. But as you are going through, you perform more karmas. So on one side, this 100 is getting exhausted. On the other side, you are adding more karmas. So let us say in this lifespan, you added 1,000 karmas. So when you die, what is the total there? 900 plus 1,000. 1,900. Again, let us say 100 has come as prarabdha. So what is left? 1,800. That 100 you are doing your prarabdha. In the process, another 1,000 you add. Again you go back. How much? 2,000. Have you got the idea?
Yes, I have understood.
So this is how the whole thing is going on. Now, will you ever be able to exhaust all sanchitas? Impossible. Impossible. It will keep on increasing because you are exhausting 100. In its place, you are adding another 1,000. So it is just impossible that we can exhaust all our sanchita karma and become liberated. It is not possible. Now, naturally, the question is, how then can we exhaust all this? So then we say, only through jnanam it is possible, self-knowledge. So the question is, this sanchita, prarabdha, agami, it is for whom? Then we find that it is for the ego, the karta, the doer, the ahankara. So what does this self-knowledge do? Self-knowledge makes you aware that you are not the ego, you are Satchidananda Atma. So with self-knowledge, what have you done? You have killed the ego. Once the ego is dead, can Sanchita Agami Prarabdha hang on to the ego? No. All those karmas are erased. To make this concept clear, Pujya Gurudev used to give the example of this, this criminal. So this criminal had done so many crimes. There were big files pending. Some say 10, 20 files were there. Cases pending against him. Right? And each case, it has its own punishment. Then what happened? This criminal was caught by the police and in a shootout he died. Now once the criminal is dead, what will you do with all these cases? It has to be discarded, isn't it? Because the person is not there. Whom will you punish? The fellow is dead. So this is what knowledge does. So once you come to know, I am not this BMI, I am pure consciousness which has nothing to do with the body, I am the observer of the body. Once you know this, ego is dead. And once the ego is dead, all this Sanchita Agama Prarabdha hanging on to the ego, that also just vanishes. So this is the way to get liberation.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful explanation.
both the anxiety you created and then you quelled it in one shot, saying that yeah, it is possible. Thank you, Swamiji. So yeah, we have come to 11:56. I think I will take a little bit of liberty and see that at least all of them, one question they have asked. So another maybe 3 questions is okay, Swamiji?
Let us continue up to 12:30.
12:30, if everybody is okay, we have no problem. So I'll continue in the sequence. Thank you. Yeah, the next is from Mr. Vishwas, Thursday group.
Hari Om Swamiji.
Hari Om, Hari
Om. Swamiji, I would like to know if there is any difference between Vasana and Samskara. Because Samskara, I thought, is normally associated with, the set of spiritual behaviors with the good qualities. But is there really a difference between Vasanas and Samskaras?
Technically, they are used synonymously. So what is Vasana? The impression that is left in the mind once the action is performed, that impression is called Vasana. Sometimes it is called a Samskara also. So technically in a spiritual context, Vasana and Samskara, they mean both same. There is no difference. Unless specifically they have mentioned something else, these two terms, they mean the same thing. So Vasanas can be said inclination, tendency, impression, the taste, all these things they're all synonymous terms in this context. So there is no difference at all.
Okay.
Yeah, Vishwas, you can continue with your next question on the same.
Swamiji, you beautifully, described about the Sanchita Karma, the fructification and all. But, in the past several lives, as I said, we would have collected several Sanchita Karmas, and we would have had the tendencies, the Vasanas, or the Samskaras. Is there any way that, they get fructified in the next life? Is there, technically, if I can put it, is there anything called as last in, first out, or something like that?
Yes. See, every action will have to fructify as karma phala.
Right.
Karma has to become karma phala. Now, how long will the karma phala take to fructify will depend on karma. For example, if I pinch, pinching is karma, the pain I experience is karma phala.
Right.
It happens immediately, isn't it? But suppose I eat food, digestion is a karma phala, it will take another 2-3 hours. If I write an exam, it may take 1 month for fructification. Right? A child is born in 9 months. See?
Right.
So, depending on the karma, the time taken for the karma to become karma phala, it depends on the type of karma which we perform. So it can be anything, first in, first out, or last in, first out, anything is possible.
Okay.
It's like the seed, some seeds sprout overnight, Some seeds sprout after so many years.
So that is the sequence even in the from Janma to Janma, is it?
Yes. Always.
Right.
So you have a stack of karmas to be exhausted.
Yeah.
Unless we shed, yeah. So next question is from Mrs. Meera, Sunday Evening Group.
Hari Om Swamiji. How can I be relieved of the karmic bonds with at least some people for sure forever? Is there a way to know that the debts are paid completely? I listened to your previous answer and I understand that the ultimate way would be to dissociate myself with this identity, false identity. But certain experiences are taken to the point that really want to be free from any more of these karmic bonds.
Yes.
Free myself and from free others. Is that even possible to recognize and implement any steps towards that?
Yes. Now see, Amma, what is a bond? Bond means bondage, right? Something is binding you, and that thing which bondage means lack of freedom. Bondage means a sense of helplessness. Now, with a certain person, how do you know whether you are bound with certain person? Whether that certain person has made you helpless? How do you know? It is the raga dvesha, the intense likes and dislikes, which binds you with that person. How are you getting bound? See, when you intensely love a person, you helplessly think about that person. You cannot but think about that person. You are helpless. Your mind is always preoccupied with that person. Can you see the bondage there?
Yes, Swamiji.
In the same way, when you hate someone, again you are preoccupied.
True.
You are not allowed to do anything else. You want to do meditation, but this person comes again and again and you are not allowed. You see this? This state of helplessness is called bondage.
Yes, Swamiji.
Because now we are not talking of physical bondage, we are talking of psychological bondage, which you call as karmic bondage. Right? So wherever there is intense raga dvesha, understand there is bondage. Because that person is making you helpless at the mind level. The moment that thought of the person comes, either you jump with joy if there is raga, or you become very bitter because of dvesha. In whichever way, you are helpless. Okay. So what is the way to end karmic bonds with everyone? There is only one way: go beyond raga dvesha. Put an end to all the raga dvesha. But how to do that? There is only one way: in everyone, see the Lord. See the Lord in everyone. You love your God, right? So the moment you start loving God, you are not seeing that person, you are seeing God in that person. So then all the raga dveshas just disappear, and all the karmic bonds also disappear. This is the only way. This is a perfect way.
Sure, Swamiji. Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Yeah. The next set of questions are for the consciousness and reflected consciousness. The first question is from Vishwas, Thursday Group.
Hari Om Swamiji. See, many texts, they mention that self is also known by different names such as soul, spirit, Atma, Chaitanya, Purusha, consciousness, etc. But I have slightly a different thought on this, which I'm explaining with the example. See, when there is a fire, there is heat, right? Heat and fire coexist. Fire and heat coexist. And there cannot be any heat without fire. But however, fire and heat are not the same. Fire is the cause and heat is the effect, right? So now consciousness is a state of awareness, which can be compared to the heat. Consciousness is an expression of the presence of spirit or Atma in the body. It is an expression of life which has obtained due to the presence of spirit. My understanding is that spirit and consciousness coexist, but they may not be the same. So can I say self is a combination of spirit and consciousness, similar to fire and heat? It clarifies.
The first statement is fire is the cause, heat is the effect. Correct?
Yeah.
That's what you are saying. In the same way, you mean to say self is the cause and all the other things, Satchidananda, they are the effect. That's what you are saying. I hope I have understood the question. Fire is the cause, heat is the effect, isn't it? So there is a cause-effect relationship. This is what you are saying.
Right.
Now, what is a cause-effect relationship? When will we say that there is a cause-effect relationship? Now, one of the necessary conditions for cause-effect relationship is cause must be able to exist even without effect. For example, seed is the cause, tree is the effect.
Right.
Seed can exist without the tree, at least in the beginning.
Right.
Parents are the cause, children are the effect. In the beginning, parents are only there, children are not there.
Right.
Wood is the cause, furniture is the effect. In the initial stage, only wood was there, furniture was not there. Mud is the cause, pot is the effect. Gold is the cause, ornaments are the effects. So in every these things, in this relationship, you will find that in the beginning there was only cause. After some time, effect fructified, manifested.
Right.
Now, fire-heat relationship, is there a situation where there was only fire and heat has not yet come?
No.
No, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is never a situation where there was only fire and heat has not yet come. See, maybe you are experiencing heat later. That is the problem with our skin. You keep the hand on the fire and after a fraction of a second you experience the heat.
Correct.
That is the problem with the skin. It is not the problem with the fire. The moment fire comes, that very same moment heat is also there.
Correct.
Therefore, we have to conclude heat is not the effect. There is no cause-effect relationship. In fact, heat is the property of fire.
Okay.
When we say heat is the property of fire, heat and fire, they coexist. You cannot separate them.
Correct.
Cause-effect can be separated. I hope
Correct.
I made it clear.
Yeah.
In the same way, we say self is Sat, Chit, Ananda. Now,
Right.
Satchidananda is not the effect because the moment self is the very same moment Satchidananda also is.
Okay. So they are
Right.
same.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then consciousness, is it a state of awareness? Basically, conscious Satchidananda is a property. It's like fire and heat are properties. Satchidananda consciousness means Satchidananda.
Yes, Chit means consciousness.
Chit means
They are
consciousness.
both one and the same. They coexist at the same time. You can't separate one from the other.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I think my next question was, from this context, can you tell us what is reflected consciousness? I mean, of course, we have read a lot about the reflected consciousness. Now, this reflected consciousness play in our life?
See, reflected consciousness is a combination of consciousness and reflecting medium. Exactly like reflected light is a combination of light and reflecting medium.
Mirror.
So, for example, in the sun, so in the reflected sun, you see the property of sun also, and you see the property of the reflecting medium also. So, if the reflecting medium is shaky, then the reflected sun is also shaky. So, two things as though have combined together, light and the reflecting medium. This is exactly what has happened in our case also. We are all a combination of consciousness and matter, as though consciousness and matter has combined together. So the BMI comes from the matter, the life principle comes from consciousness. So it appears as though two things have combined together. So to make this concept clear, we take this Pratibhimbavada, the theory of reflection. So in reflection also same thing has happened, combination of two things. Light is combined with what is that? Reflecting medium.
reflected medium.
Yes, 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 yes.
Is it okay, Vishwas? So we go to the next set of topic, that is on mind and meditation. Mr. Prabhakaran from Sunday Morning Group.
Yeah, I try to do meditation. Even for 15 minutes is not possible because the mind keeps on wavering and going here and there. How do I do it?
See, this topic very soon we are going to take up, because Sundari Amma has said that we must have a session on meditation, guided meditation. So we will
Yes.
take up a topic, obstacles in meditation. Main two obstacles are, one is sleep, the other is wandering mind. These are the two obstacles. In detail,
Yes.
we are going to take it very soon.
Fine.
Yeah. The next question is Mrs. Jayashree. I see
Yeah.
the necessity to forget and move on.
Yeah. Hari Om Swamiji, I see the necessity to forget and move on for both the wrong actions done by me and to me in the past. But it is often coming forcefully back as bitterness towards others and guilt towards myself. How to truly be free from these past memories, given that I'm still living among the people and situations created by these memories?
Amma, there are four things we must always do in life. When we do good to others, when others do good to us, when others do bad to us, and when we do bad to others. These are the four situations. We do good to others, others do good to us. We do bad, others do bad. So when we do good to others, what should be our attitude? Humility. Never should we become arrogant that because of me, that person is happy. No. Humility. So when I do good to others, I must practice humility. When others do good to me, I must practice gratitude. So these are very great virtues which will help us very much in spirituality. Now, when I do something bad to others, when I hurt others, unknowingly or knowingly, what should I do? I must seek forgiveness. I'm really sorry. In that mood, I did something, spoke something, I'm really sorry. So this way, we must clear that guilt, because if you use some abusive word, one thing is for sure, your mind is disturbed. And remember, the disturbed mind is a clear indication that God in our heart did not like what we have done. It's a coded message from our Creator that our action is wrong. Right? So when we do something wrong, you will find that the moment you confess, when you apologize for it, you will find that your mind gets clear. That means as though Bhagavan has forgiven you. Right? So when we do something wrong, we should seek forgiveness. When others do something wrong to us, we must have the ability to forgive them. We must have the ability to forgive them. If we are not able to forgive, understand it is the sign of spiritual weakness. Just like we have physical weakness, there is a heavy weight there. If you are not able to lift, what does it mean? If you are not able to lift, it means you are physically weak. What is the sign of spiritual weakness? When you are not able to forgive, where you are not able to become compassionate, then that is spiritual weakness. So when the spiritual weakness comes, what is the way we have to do? We should say, Bhagavan, I am not able to forgive. Please give me the strength. Turn to God and seek that strength. Remember, we are all evolving. In many thousands of births are needed to evolve. So when we are dealing with people, some people have just graduated from animal kingdom. This is their first human birth. Possible. So you will find all their primitive, unrefined way of behavior. Because they are at a tamasic level. So such people you will come across in life. So what should be our attitude? Our attitude should be acceptance, forgiveness, love, compassion. Because, that person is also evolving, but he needs more opportunities, which only time can give. In life, there are people who are much evolved than us. Sattvic people, jnanis, Jivan Muktas are there. So from them, we should gain inspiration. They must inspire us. So all kinds of people are there in the society. What we have to do? Love, forgive people who are at a lower level and gain inspiration from others people who are at a higher level. Did I answer question?
Perfect, Swamiji, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Swamiji. There's a good clarity on, you have segregated it so neatly that it's easy to understand. Thank you. So next is from Mrs. Chitra, Sunday Evening Group.
Many Hari Om Swamiji, you have answered most of it in all our discussions. But anyway, I'll ask once more. I do say a lot of slogans, everything. And when I'm doing that, and when I'm praying, when sitting in front of my puja room and I'm saying that, there's an immense satisfaction and a feeling of peace and happiness that I've reached out and done. I've reached to God and He has heard my prayers, and definitely He's going to be there. That faith I have. But the same thing when I sit down to do my meditation, I'm just not able to, I feel I'm not able to reach that level of focus, concentration. I have not reached God. He has not heard me. So that was so how do I get that focus? How do I get that concentration?
Amma, in the prayer, are you peaceful?
Most times I'm peaceful, but of course, even in that prayer, I do get irritated when
in the prayer time,
when the doorbell rings. As I'm just getting into that focus and concentration in my prayer, and the bell rings, that moment there is an instant of irritation. But then I say, no, it is not the person who is ringing the bell whose fault. He has to do his job, and I sort of again ask for forgiveness and get back into trying to say my prayers. But many of the questions, when Meeraji's question about Lalita Sahasranamam, Vishnu Sahasranamam, you explain that when you feel you're losing focus, I must get back, I must stop and focus and do it. Here I have one more question before, because what you said to her was that we need to say each line or each verse and stop, focus and see. So in this way, when we are saying our prayers, it takes a very long time. But my household and the other, activities which I have to carry on, I may have to stop the prayers in between. Is that all right?
The whole point is be in the present.
Yes.
Don't do multitasking. That is the whole point. Okay. Don't do multitasking. You are doing one thing and at the same time worrying about something else. No. That was the point which I was trying to.
No, I understood that point, Swamiji. What I was trying to say is that, okay, I want to be in the present. I want to say my prayers. So, but I do know that I have other responsibilities. I have my husband, other children are waiting for their lunch or dinner or their homework, or I have a call, I have to talk to somebody. I do know that that is also there. So when I focus and say my prayers, can I stop that halfway because I say, all right, this is all I can pray now because I have other responsibilities waiting for me?
Yes.
I'll
yes.
have time and I'll pray. When I'm focused and I know I have that concentration and I can reach you, then I will come back to pray. So can I just leave it in between like that and get up and go?
Yes. Nothing wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we come to progress in spiritual journey and self-knowledge. Mr. Ramaya Gopalan.
Swamiji, this is regarding my understanding of the three states, the waking state, the sleep state, and the deep sleep state. In the waking state, when we conduct the worldly transactional matters, the physical, gross body, subtle body, causal body, vasanas are all active. In the sleeping state is nothing but a projection of the mind of what we are doing in the waking state. In the deep sleep state, none of them is present except the consciousness. Is that understanding correct? Because out of which I have two questions to follow. In the sleep state, it is nothing but a projection of the mind of the waking state. And in the deep sleep state,
Yes.
all of them are dormant and inactive, and only the consciousness is present.
Yes.
So that is based on which I have two questions. One, the waking state provides us the greatest opportunities to dilute the intensity of vasanas we carry. Because if you are able to do a lot of karma without doership, ownership, and raga dvesha, we have a very good opportunity to dilute the vasanas, intensity of vasanas. Is it correct, Swamiji? Is my understanding?
Very true. Very true.
The second question is, in deep sleep state, none of them is present except the consciousness. Therefore,
yes,
the higher the frequency we are able to get into the deep sleep state, is it an indicator of our spiritual progress? That is my question. Hari Om.
Your sleep has something to do with your waking state. If you are dreaming a lot, understand there are so many undigested experiences in the waking state. So if you are leading a spiritual life in the waking state, your dreams will be very... See that sleep itself is of three kinds. One is sattvic sleep, rajasic sleep, and tamasic sleep. Sattvic sleep means deep sleep, dreamless sleep. It is very refreshing. That is sattvic sleep. Rajasic sleep means lot of dreams. And tamasic sleep means you sleep and you feel more and more tired. The more you sleep, the more you feel tired. So, if you are leading a spiritual life intensely, you will find that your sleep quality will be sattvic and not rajasic or tamasic. So, definitely, the quality of sleep is an indication of your spiritual life in the waking state.
Hari Om.
Did I answer, Ramaya?
Yes. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Yes. Hari.
So the next question is from me. Actually, I've been attending the study class since 2003. And yeah, I have read, my first question was that on the books and the texts, I understand now that they are towards purification. But then how do I convert it into practice? Because I'm very well aware of so many things which we have to do. How do we easily convert it into practice?
Become a sweet person.
Yeah. So,
you know, Puja Gurudev used to say, when does the coffee taste sweet? You have put sugar, but the coffee is still bitter. Why? The sugar has not dissolved in the coffee. So what is the proof that sugar has dissolved in the coffee? That coffee becomes sweet, isn't it? In the same way, what is the proof that spirituality is really sinking in? It is sinking. What is the proof? We become a non-grumbling, non-complaining, cheerful person. So our personality reflects it. So this is the way we have to practice it. You become a more peaceful person, accepting person. Complaining becomes less, and you are very comfortable in harmony with the creation. This is the proof. You are in harmony with nature, you are in harmony with people, you have no problems with anyone, whether it is family members, neighbors, relatives, or strangers, or you have no problem with anyone. This is a sign that we are progressing in spirituality. Or there is something called FIR test. You must have heard of it. F means frequency, I means intensity, R means recovery time. How frequently you are disturbed, that is F. How intensely you are disturbed, that is I. How quickly you recover from your disturbance, that is R. So what should happen as you spiritually evolve? Your FIR starts reducing. This is a proof that we are progressing spiritually.
Swamiji, if I may just ask a related question. Now, as you progress through the spiritual thing, you are learning all of these qualities and trying to consciously adopt them in your life. That is when transformation happens. But but we live in a society, or in a setup where constantly you're dragged down, right? So how do we hold on to that faith, or hold on to that thing, and still not FIR you said, not get irritated, still not get frustrated or whatever, right? How to hold on to that thing? Because constantly, the situation at home or at office or outside, constantly has to keep pulling you down, right? How maintain that equanimity and not really let yourself react.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
You heard me, Swamiji?
Yes. See, Amma, there is only one way: strengthen your spirituality. Remember, the situation is provided by the Lord, because God knows that this is a right kind of environment necessary for you to grow. Each and every one of us, we have been put in a particular type of environment, right? This environment is decided by whom? By the Lord. Because He knows that this is the only environment where we can spiritually evolve. So therefore, let us first of all non-complainingly accept that this is the right situation for me to evolve spiritually. Because this situation is decided not by the people, this situation is decided by the Lord of the universe. So there is something to learn from the situation, from the people around me. There is something to learn. There is some lesson kept for me. So there are some disturbing people. So I have to work out on myself so that I have to win over certain negativities which are in me. See, suppose there is a wound in the body. So somebody touches that wound, you will feel pain, isn't it? No, you will not say that because you touched there is pain. No, because there is wound, there is pain.
So true.
So what should I do? Instead of trying to change others, correct others, blame others, no, I have to try to heal the wound here. He touched this place and there is pain, means there is a wound. So what should I do? I should heal here. So every situation which disturbs me is an indication from the Lord that there is some improvement is left to be done in me. I have to win over certain weaknesses. There are certain defects in my personality. That is why the situation has been provided. Are you going to understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, such a big truth, right? We forget that fundamental point that, God is the one who's, I think everywhere is so cultured to be thinking it is me doing it. The moment we that to God, then I think all this automatically will start happening. I think that's
exactly
what we focus ourselves that, okay, this is God doing, or this is God. Always remember that. God doing.
Yes.
And I think then everything else falls in place.
Yes, exactly.
This is a huge learning.
Swamiji, we have come to our stop time of 12:30. We have another.
No problem. Continue on. I have no issues.
Five more questions. If everybody is okay. Amini auntie, the organizer.
I have to go now. It's okay. I am enjoying the questions also very good. It shows that you all are really doing sadhana and you want to make Swamiji cleared it so wonderfully. So
Yeah.
go on with your questions, and as I asked to Sundari, we can perhaps continue
Yeah.
next time. And also, meditation is very, very much, guidance in meditation is very much needed. We can feel that.
Last part of the morning session, and I would request Sri Prabhakaran to deliver the vote of thanks to Swamiji on behalf of all of us. So over to you, Mr. Prabhakaran.
Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Pranams to Gurudev, Pujya Swami Chinmayananda Guruji, Pujya Swami Tejomayananda, Pujya Swami Brahmananda, and the Acharyas of Chinmaya Mission, by whom we are guided to pursue our journey to find fulfillment of human existence. I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Swamiji Aparajitananda Ji for taking out his time from his busy schedule to grace the event and clarify the innumerable doubts of the participants. A special appreciation to all those who are involved in organizing this meeting, especially to mention Mrs. Sundari, Sunil, and Meera, who consistently worked on it. I wish to express my sincere thanks to Mrs. Krishnan for giving me this opportunity to propose vote of thanks. Hari Om.
Thank you so much. In conclusion, may I call upon Srimati Jayashri to chant the concluding prayers. As before, all participants should chant along with their mics muted. You can keep your videos on. Thank you.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतङ्गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ